Hello friends, how are you? Good morning. Today we are going to discuss a poem by Shakespeare entitled Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? As a matter of fact, in our earlier videos, we already have discussed about sonnet and outstanding characteristics of sonnet. Basically, there are two types of sonnets: Petrarchan modeled sonnet and Shakespearean modeled sonnet. Historically, Shakespearean modeled sonnet in England was innovated by Surrey and fully innovated by Shakespeare and followed in England. Shakespeare, as the prince of drama, in his old dramas, it is also disputed whether 37 or 38 dramas, but as per the documents, 37 dramas are regarded, and one is in the confusion whether be regarded or not. When we come to this literary view and the discussion of the sonnet, Shakespeare snatched his time from the drama production, and during this period he composed a certain sonnets relating to the certain themes. In the sequence of his sonnets, he composed about 154 sonnets, and from very first to 126 are addressed to his patron and his friend Earl of Southampton, W.H., and 127 to 152 are addressed to a certain lady regarded dark lady. Certain critics also regard that the dark lady is beloved Anne Hathaway, and the two remaining are unknown. Certain literary documents also prove, studies also prove that these two sonnets were addressed to the god of poetry. When we come to Shakespeare's life and Shakespeare's sequence of sonnets, in his life there were two persons. One is patron and a friend W.H., who contributed and helped him much in the literary career as a dramatist and the actor or the poet. Other one is a beloved. He revolutionized the word English literature, and when we come to his career and his sonnet career as a sonneter, it is the great series of the 154 sonnets, and his certain sonnet entitled Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day is the 18th number sonnet in the sonnets series or the sequence. It is supposed it was composed in 1590 and published in 1609. In this sonnet, when we deal structurally, there are so many structural glories and the literary figures. When we come to Shakespearean modeled sonnet, already we have discussed about the outstanding characteristics as the division of Shakespearean sonnet, rhyme scheme and theme. How Shakespearean sonnets generally divided in four parts: three quatrains. Quatrain means four lines, stanza, and the couplet, last two concluding lines. In Shakespearean sonnets, it is the usual treatment in the first opening stanza. In the first quatrain, the pragmatic theme is presented, and in second quatrain, the theme is expansioned, and in third quatrain is extensioned. And by the last concluding stanza, couplet, the couplet is regarded as seal a stanza for the purpose of the theme. When structurally we come to this sonnet, in this sonnet, several literary figures have been applied as the rhetorical question. And in literature, what does mean rhetorical question? We already know, we have discussed a literary question, rhetorical question. That means in the tone of the question, its answer is ultimately followed. Poet speaks very rhetorically, and personification, metonym, anaphora, and metaphors, alliteration, other all such type literary figures have been applied to decorate the literary application. Here this sonnet is addressed to his friend, and thematically this sonnet is very exclusive and explosive. This sonnet highlights the virtues of friendship, the nobilities of a person. Poet compares his friend's characteristics, nobilities in the comparison in the images of the nature. And the poet starts to say, let us have taste. Poet says, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? In very opening line, poet puts a question, poet speaks rhetorically. And when poet speaks rhetorically with the rhetoric question, that means he doesn't need to compare his friend to the glory of the summer's day. In cold countries, summer's day, glory means the beauty and richness everywhere. But poet rejects the idea. Poet doesn't like to compare his friend to the glory of nature. And what is the ground to reject this idea? He clears in the next lines. Poet speaks, thou art more lovely and more temperate. Here, more has been applied twice. This application in literature is regarded dicope. Dicope means when a same word is used and applied for two or more purposes. Here he says, thou art more lovely and more temperate. Poet says that his friend is more lovely and more temperate than the glory of the summer, than the glory of summer's days. Why? Poet rejects the idea, now poet clears. Rough winds do shake the darling birds of the May. Here, poet views that if he compares his friends to the glory of the summer day, the beauty, the glory of summer day is decayed in the cruel hands of time, in the cruel hands of the wind, rough wind. While on other hand, poet's glory is not to be wrapped, is not to be decayed in the cruel hands of time. Here, when poet says, rough wind do shake the darling birds of the May. Here, darling birds of the May, here literary figure is personification. May has been personified. Here, darling bird. Darling is a characteristic of the human being. But here poet applies for the purpose of comparison to the nature image and the summer's leaves. Summer's leaves hath all too short date. And again poet says that the summer's leaves. Lease here means temporary property, borrowed property. And why poet here applies lease? Lease means here summer's glory, summer's beauty is temporary. Due to short date, with the short time, with the short period, the glory, the beauty scattered in the month of May is decayed in the hands of time, sometimes to hold the eye of heaven shines. Here when poet says, the eye of heaven, that is applied for the sun. And here literary figure is metonym. Metonym in literature we know that a substitute for a thing or the person. Here the eye of heaven metonymed for sun, and he says that means sometimes sun shines and often is gold complexion dimmed. Dimmed means the brightness of the sun is dimmed, means is covered or decayed through the clouds and the rough atmosphere, and every fair sometime declines. Every fair, every beautiful thing of the world declines, decayed in the span of the time, in the hands of the time. By chance or nature, changing course untrimmed. By chance, here poet means by the circumstances or nature's changing course. It is nature course, it is the nature of the nature that it changes. It's not permanent. Seasons changes. While on the other hand, the poet's characteristic means the nobility, goodness, characteristics of a poet's friend, that is to be firmed and feathered, never changed. Here there may be disorder, and untrimmed means the dismanaged arrangement in the world, in the nature, but in the character of a poet's friend, he doesn't think so. So the idea to compare summer's day glory is dropped out by the poet. Poet's beauty, poet's characteristic beauty is beyond even the beauty of the nature. But thy in third quatrain, now poet speaks with a twisting idea. Here he is going to complete his thematic viewpoint and says, but thy eternal summer shall not fade. Here poet views that the beauty, that the glory of his friend would not come to be seized in the cruel hands of time or the circumstances of the atmosphere, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Here poet also says, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Here owest means possess the characteristics, the quality, what poet's friend possesses would not be declined or wouldn't be roughed in the rough hands of the time. Here poet also continues to philosophize his idea, nor shall death break. Here also again the personification poet applies personification and says death break. Break here means dictionary meaning is boasting. Death boast for its power. And what for it boast? It boasts that it is permanently declines everything, kills everything of the world, and here poet says, thou wanders in his shade. When eternal lines to time thou growest, and poet says, why even death won't able to kill his friend, to decline his friend's glory, because here poet mentions the philosophic viewpoint. He has lost his friend's qualities, his friend's beauty in the lines of literature, in poetry, and poetry would continue till the word would continue. Here poet also glorifies the literature. He says, he views all the worldly things wouldn't be continue, but poet also affirms that literature would continue till the world wrote. Now in this way he begins in the very first stanza, that is the introductory, with a certain theme, with a certain idea, and a second and third quatrain. He establishes, he illustrates his own idea. Why he says so? Why he rejects to compare his friend's glory to the summer's day? He has illustrated, he has exemplified by the viewpoint. But in the last couplet, last concluding lines, poet now seals his theory, his philosophy, so long as man can breathe or eye can see. Here, poet says, when he has lost his friend, his gratitude, his glory, his spiritual beauty. Here, one thing also to be clear, that in this sonnet, only when we go through the sonnet's textual lines, that means one thing is clear. Poet distinguishes the spiritual beauty and the physical beauty. And in the concluding line, the couplet, that is the couplet, he views, he philosophizes that spiritual beauty is permanent, not physical beauty. Physical beauty is not permanent, it is to be decayed in the cruel hands of time. So he says, so long as man can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. And here, by the sealing seal, a couplet, poet stamps his ideology. And his ideology, his idea, his viewpoint is that his friend would be alive till the world would continue. Through the glory of poetry, through the glory of literature, because all over the world, abroad the world, till world continue, the posterity to posterity, through the literature, through the mode of literature, the glory, spiritual glory of his friend would be all over the world, be chanted all over the world. So he philosophizes, and throughout the textual lines, the whole theory of this sonnet is true friendship and the true glory of the spirit. He views that a spiritual glory is permanent, while physical glory is to be decayed in the rough hands of the time, in the rough hands of the circumstances. So here in this poem, poet confirms the glory of the friendship. I think having such literary figures and the thematic viewpoint, it will be enough for you. Either you face any standards exam. Here also, when we try to go through very initially, here anaphora also has been applied. When in the poem, poet starts and often and every fair, in these two lines, poet begins with a same word, that is and. And anaphora means, anaphora is a literary term or the figure. That means whenever poet starts with the same word in two and more lines or the phrase, that is regarded anaphora. In this sonnet also there are so many literary figures to be noted down. I think it's just enough to you. It will be very helpful. Please try to go through the whole video. It will be very helpful every kind of competitive or academic exam. Thank you. We will meet you in next video. Thank you.